then we're going to get into it, and I'm going to show my screen to monitor 2. Slideshow, start from the first slide. Okay, Amos, and how do I describe Amos? Amos is one of those guys where you ever meet someone that always is in a bad mood?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no matter what you do, Alex, no matter what you do, he's always in a bad mood, right? No, I'm just kidding, Alex. But he's always talking about Wisconsin and all that, and it's not really cold here, and why am I complaining? And just like, anyways, no, just kidding. No, but Amos is like that times a million, okay? And the way that I describe Amos is he is the prophet of hopelessness. He is the prophet of hopelessness, okay? And I'll explain why as we continue on with our presentation, all right? The dating of Amos. It is according to Amos chapter 1, verse 1. It is during the reign of Uzziah, king of Judah, and Jeroboam II, king of Israel, okay? It is during that reign. However, based on the content, the specific content of the text, scholars have estimated that it is specifically the ministry of Amos or the writing of his book is specifically during the time of 760 to 750 BC. Okay? It is during the time, and if you want to know what was happening during this decade, it was Jeroboam's military success in Gilead. And Gilead, you know, is a northern region. And what he did is he expanded the northern kingdom's territory. Okay? So Jeroboam, the king, fought. I forgot who he fought, but he won. And he gained Gilead, okay?
Could it have been Samaria?
No, I don't think so, because remember, Samaria is the northern kingdom.
Oh, okay.
Right? And Jeroboam is a northern kingdom king. It could have been the Philistines, because the Philistines had Gilead for a long time. So it could have been. I just haven't checked. It was also before the rise of Tiglath-Pileser III, and you might be asking, who the heck is Tiglath-Pileser III? That's good. That's good that you're asking that question. I'm going to explain who Tiglath-Pileser III is in my next presentation, because in my next presentation, I'm going to talk about the Assyrians. Okay? All right. No, it's good that you do. They don't talk about them a whole lot, the kings, but yeah, it's still good to watch the video. All right. So in a nutshell, what was happening when Amos was doing his prophecy thing? It was during a time of prosperity, territory expansion, and lack of external threat in the northern kingdom. Okay? Those three main components are happening during the time of Amos. It was a time of prosperity, territorial expansion, and lack of external threat. Those are the three main things that are happening during the time of Amos. Prosperity, expansion of territory, and lack of external threat. So in the time of Amos, things were looking good for the northern kingdom. All right? Things were actually looking great for the northern kingdom. All right? Then you get this little stick that's like annoying coming into your territory and saying, oh, wait, I have this message. Even though everything is roses and peaches and you have pizza, you can have pizza every day, I got something to tell you. Okay? So that's what's happening right now. Questions?
No pizza.
No pizza. That's how messed up Amos is. But you know what? I want to really lay it thick because that's his message. But Amos is a fantastic book, and I'm going to explain why it's a fantastic book. All right?
Okay.
May I continue on?
Yes.
All right.
If you really want to.
So why is the dating so significant? Remember, I told you it's written in 750, 750 BC. Here's what's so significant about this. This is the earliest book of prophetic tradition.
This one?
This one is the earliest. It's not Hosea. Hosea got stuff from this guy. Amos is one of the very first prophetic books. Not one of, excuse me, recorded. Amos is the only recorded first book of prophetic tradition. Okay? He is the first. And because he's the first, he's the catalyst of all latter prophetic material. Everyone got stuff from Amos. Whether it's Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Hosea, all those guys get it from this guy. Okay? The major prophets, the big dudes, get it from this tiny, tiny little book. It's 9 chapters long. It's this guy that starts it all. All right? And what would have been the reasons that these group of Old Testament men and some women really clinged on to the message of Amos? It's this. It's his powerful language and passionate concern over the oppressed. That's what makes Amos a great book. Even though his message is not fun, his book is important. His book is extremely important. Okay? Because even though I say that in the northern kingdom, the kingdom of Israel, the kingdom of Ephraim, the kingdom of Samaria, even though I say that they were prosperous, they gained territory and so forth, keep in mind, they still had to pay tribute to Assyria. They still had corruption. They still had crime. They still had all these things. And if you were truly following God and you believe that this society was governed or was given the law of God to his people, wouldn't you be bothered if some of them were victimized? Wouldn't you be bothered if some never ever experienced a taste of justice? Wouldn't you be bothered if a widow and an orphan was overlooked just because they couldn't fend for themselves? It's kind of messed up, right? Because the mindset is this is God's city. The mindset is this is God's nation. And if it is God's nation, why are children still starving? Why is there still crime? Why are all these things happening? Israel during this time did not have the privilege to say that America is not a Christian nation anymore. They did not have that privilege. So there's this belief that this was still God's city, right? So if this was God's city and sin was rampant in God's city, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense, right? So that's where the prophetic tradition comes. It's to explain why the society is so messed up. Here's the reason. Here's what God's going to do about it. Okay? So that's the birth of prophetic tradition. Amos started all that. Okay? Here's the new literary tradition. Here's what prophecy is. Judgment of God's people. That's what Amos introduced. If I could give it to you in a nutshell, that's what Amos introduced. Judgment upon God's people. Because prior to that, think about it. And every Christian does it. Every Christian does it in their life once in a while. Perhaps some of us are still doing it right now. But there's this idea that there's some form of kind of divine protection just because we call ourselves Christians. Mm-hmm. Oh, God can't do that possibly to me. Why would God allow that possibly to me? I go to church. If I had money, I'd pay the tithe. I try my best. I serve him. How could God do that to me? you know? And so the whole idea here is that's kind of the same mentality with the people of Israel and the people of Judah. And it's just the whole idea is like we're protected. God's got our back. How could he possibly punish us? Why would he possibly punish us? And the whole idea is like, look at your life. Is it really living for the Lord? Inspect. Investigate your life. Don't be self-righteous and point sins about other people first. Focus on yourself. Am I really living the life that God wants me to live? Am I treating people the way that God wants me to treat people? Am I using my wealth the way that God wants me to use my wealth? It's a scary thing when you actually think about it. And the very fact that he hasn't punished us yet is a sign of his grace. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, But one of the messages that we have now is, but what if bad things do happen to us? Now with Jesus Christ, he kind of changed that. And he says that the world's the world and we'll be affected by that. So sometimes bad things happen even when you do good things, right? But then because of this tradition, we also need to ask, what if bad things are happening? I don't know. It's because I'm sinning. That's a possible answer. That's a possible answer. It's a more ancient answer because that's what the prophets harp on, or I shouldn't say harp because that's a negative tone, but that's what the prophets preach on constantly. But the reality is still there. What if bad things are happening to me is because maybe, just maybe, I'm sinning. So, yes.
So that should maybe be like in pursuit, like trying to fix that kind of situation. We should.
No. The once that moment happens, what should be, in my opinion, what should be the next response of it? The next response of it is prayer. It's prayer. Find out. That's the question. What if all these bad things are happening is because I'm sinning? I don't think I'm sinning. Lord, show me. Show me if I'm sinning. Show me if there's something that I'm going against your word and your law and your standard. If he shows it, the only response that we do is repentance. We can't fix things. The only thing that we do is, Father, forgive me. Let me turn away from it. Whatever damage that was caused, only you can fix it. Let me be patient in your mercy and kindness when you fix it, kind of thing. So yeah. You have another question?
Because I was thinking like, if we realize or feel like our life is getting crazy, like not in a like, oh, I'm hecka busy all the time, but like kind of like falling apart.
Yeah.
That our first step should be like, okay, God, like,
what's going on?
Am I sinning? Like,
yes.
Okay.
Right. Or like just have this moment to ask questions with God. God, what's going on? There's a moment in my life where things are unraveling. I don't feel that I have any more strength to handle it. What's going on? Is it a test that you wish for me to go through? Because I don't feel that I'm sinning? Or am I sinning? Show me, Lord. It should compel us to pray. It should compel us to pray. It should compel us to seek the Lord. So, cool? All right, may I continue on?
Yes.
All right. So not only is it judgment of God's people, this is Amos's message. And this is why I'm telling you, like, Amos is the guy where you just he's this awesome man of God. You know that. And you give him the respect for that, right? This awesome person of God. But when you're like having lunch with him, it's just like, man, I really don't want to hang out with this guy kind of guy. All right. So here's the reason why. It's an extreme message, Amos. And this is his message. The end of the northern kingdom. That's his message. Okay? That's his message. Now, some of you, because you know the entire book of the Bible, some of you are saying, but God will restore them. God will restore them. Here's the thing about Amos, and this is what makes his message so extreme. He doesn't talk about restoration. Amos rarely talks about restoration. Of his 9 chapters, there's only 4 verses that allude to some form of restoration. That's it. The rest of his book is death and destruction upon the northern kingdom. That's the extremeness of his message, okay? And there's a lot of suspicion of those 4 verses too. A lot of suspicion of those 4 verses. Like, for example, a lot of people think that another prophet read Amos and says, oh my gosh, this is way too harsh. And they added these prophecies, these restoration prophecies. So a lot of people don't think that these 4 verses are written by Amos. And when you think about it, if you omit them, it makes a lot more sense, the book. Now, don't get me, I'm not saying that Amos didn't write them. I really believe that he did, but I think there's another reason why he writes them, kind of thing. But all I'm saying is this, that's his message. The end of the northern kingdom, dot. No dot, 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 dot. The end of the northern kingdom. Yes?
Does that just mean like that they'd be conquered?
Yep. Yep. That means that total annihilation. What is the religious implication of that? The religious implication is this, the extinction of a part of God's people. A majority of God's people. It's the extinction of the 10 tribes. They are kaput. They are gone. So long, sayonara, I will not see you again. That is the religious implication, according to Amos. What does this suggest also? The cessation, oopsie. This also suggests the cessation of covenant relationship.
It means like to stop, right?
Yeah, stop. Where basically God in his action is saying, I no longer have covenant relationship with you. I am cutting my covenant relationship, my protection from the 10 tribes. That's Amos. But then you have Hosea and say, yeah, you're going to get punished, but the faithful will come back. Okay, so that's the big thing about Amos that you guys need to know. The big thing is his extreme message. The end of the northern kingdom. That's it.
We don't go back to sleep.
What's that? May I continue on?
The end is coming. We are all doomed.
Yeah, I really feel that, we have that motif in movies and TV shows now. The end is near, the guy with the sign and stuff like that. This is the archetype. This is the guy that starts that. That's Amos.
So I was gonna ask that. So because I know Jeremiah, Ezekiel, they
Yeah.
all had like a theme,
Right.
or a message to give to
Right.
the Southern Kingdom. So his is the end of Northern Kingdom is his message.
The end of the northern kingdom is his message, exactly. Let me talk about the author. Limited biographical information, very limited. We're not sure who he is at a personal level. There's been a lot of attempts to provide a biography of who Amos is. The only 2 forms of information that we have within the book is that he was born in Judah in a city called Tekoa. He was born in Tekoa in a city in Judah, okay? And apparently his occupation, he had 2 jobs. He was a herdsman and a trimmer of sycamore trees. He was a herdsman and a trimmer of sycamore trees. That's all we know about the guy. And I don't have it blatantly in the presentation, but you should know this. And if you don't know it yet, I'll tell you right now. Even though Amos was a person who was born and raised in Judah, the southern kingdom. He was a prophet for the northern kingdom. Okay? So even though he grew up in Judah, he was a prophet in the northern kingdom.
I remember so many times in like Old Testament survey and history, that was so hard to keep up. Like, wait, what? And
Yeah.
now, like being in this school for like 3 years, you're like, okay,
We
yeah,
drilled
I
it
get
in
it.
you.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
We drilled it in you.
It's like, what are you preaching over there for? I don't get it.
Now, one of the this isn't in your presentation, but I want to bring up this point about why it was so difficult for Amos to convince the nation of the northern kingdom to believe his message. And it had to do with the politics at the time. Okay? Remember, where does he come from? He comes from the southern kingdom. So you have a southern kingdom citizen going to a northern kingdom territory saying that you guys are going to be destroyed, and then there's some allusion to repentance and so forth. Remember, in the ancient Near East, your politics was your religion. Okay? So a lot of times the message was interpreted to say, what you're telling me is that I need to give up being a citizen of the northern kingdom and be a full supporter of the southern kingdom. That's what you're trying to tell me. And during this time of prosperity, every time you have a time of prosperity, you also have time of patriotism, you know? And so there's this this idea is so difficult for them to embrace. It's because of the whole political aspect of it, okay? And aren't Christians kind of going through that today?
Help us, Lord.
When you say Christian, immediately a lot of people think Republican, gun-owning, capitalist, racist, bigot. You know what I'm saying? And so it's just like, so whenever we preach a message about Christianity, a lot of times immediately when people hear it, they think of that we're all Republicans, that we all support gun rights, we're anti-abortion, this, that. And so how do we deal with that? How do we deal with that? A lot of people say we're not about politics. Here's the reality, guys. We are all about politics. We are all about politics. Okay? The very fact that we're on a crusade against abortion, it's a political issue now. We have to be in politics. We really do. Alex?
So back to your prior comment. What's your problem with guns, huh?
I don't have any problems with guns. What I'm just saying is there's a immediate presupposition with people. There's some people here that are anti-gun, and that's okay.
And surprisingly, my entire dad's side of the family.
Oh, really? So you're used to it. You're used to it.
I'm the odd one. I'm like, nah, I'm getting a gun and like go hunting. I'm like, kill myself some deer, and like cut it open and gut it and eat it.
Well, there you go. May I continue on? All right. Let's talk about major themes of the book. He goes through these major themes, and I'm going to emphasize in detail each theme, where he talks about God, Israel, and when I mean Israel, not the whole nation, just the northern kingdom, okay? The nations, nature, and the future. And once we're done with that, then I'll give you guys a break, and then we'll talk about Assyria next, and then we'll get into Joel.
I'm kind of excited to hear about the Assyrians.
Oh, really? Good.
I don't really know why. Maybe because we studied them. I think that's probably why.
All right.
They were crazy.
Yeah, they were. They were just jerks. So let's talk about God. You want to talk about God at a Christian school?
I love God.
Let's talk about God. Specifically in the book of Amos, he mentions this idea, the day of the Lord. The day of the Lord, or the day of Yahweh. Because that's what the day of the Lord is, right? It's the day of Yahweh.
Amen.
Okay? Now, the way that Amos uses, or the way that Amos describes the day of the Lord is what I told you in my first presentation on prophets. But in a nutshell, the day of the Lord or the day of Yahweh is a holy war, or Yahweh's war. Okay? It was a holy war or Yahweh's war. All right? Now, the popular idea of Yahweh Day or the Day of the Lord is he's a warrior God who fights against Israel's enemies. That's the popular understanding. Yahweh Day, I'm going to use that from now on for the Day of the Lord. Yahweh Day is when God is described as a warrior and he fights off Israel's enemies. That's the popular understanding. Okay? Is it a true understanding? Yes, it's a true understanding. Because in Revelation, we do have, or the end of the world, we do have a God who will be warrior-like, and he will administer justice for those who haven't experienced justice during this time. Okay? So there is that. Okay? How did Amos interpret it? This is how Amos interpreted it. God is a warrior against sinful Israel. That's how Amos interprets it. He is a warrior against sinful Israel. And here's the thing that we need to understand about Amos, especially if you read Amos already. Don't presuppose that Amos was given a revelation of the full picture. A lot of times we stereotype prophets to be just this one model. They're all different. They're all very diverse. And we need to understand that with Amos. Amos, in my opinion, wasn't given a revelation from God that was the full picture. That's why he was all about judgment, 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 judgment. He had a very pinhole kind of revelation that this is part of God's plan, that this is God enacting judgment upon Israel for their sins, and that he didn't know anything else after that. So in his mind, he believes that if it's the end for the northern kingdom, right? But then you have Hosea, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and they have a bigger picture of what God has in store for his people, right? But for Amos, it's just this small perspective. Small perspective, okay? The reason why I say that is you have to know that. You have to know that because I don't want you to make absolute conclusions of who God is when you just read the book of Amos. You can't do that. Because if you just read the book of Amos for who God is, the God that you have is a Muslim God. He's a very angry God. He's a very tyrannical God. He is the warrior God. What? Okay. So I have a quote here, and you don't have to write the quote verbatim, but I want you to understand what this gentleman is saying. Amos is thus not to be taken as the last word about the nature of God. It is rather an overstatement of the judgmental aspect of God. Okay? So it's only a partial picture of who God is. It is only a partial picture of who God is. But it is an important picture, especially in American society. Because one of the things that we do not wish to admit in evangelical Christianity is that God is a judging God. He still enacts judgment. And for some reason, people get offended by that. Okay? But that's true. We need to understand that. That's biblical. God is not just simply a loving God. Oh, all my scattered sheep, come back. And we'll hang out. And we'll watch Powerpuff Girls together. And eat. No, it's not that. I'm sorry, Brene. God is more than that. God is not just simply the welcoming, affirming, loving God that he is. He is. He's also the judging God. He separates. He makes distinctions. he judges and so forth. So we got to understand that. And that's good that we have Amos. Yes, go ahead, Cynthia.
In a sense, I understand why people don't want to think that way.
Uh-huh.
But I feel like I don't understand it mostly because I feel like that's such a big part of, like, not only when I have evangelized, like, I've used that example, like, if a judge would, cause punishment for even a small crime here on earth, and God is the ultimate judge, then what is he to say about, like, I've heard people use that, and I've used it myself, or even to say, like, oh, well, where are you going to go because you're going to face judgment someday.
Right.
We say that, at least I feel like I hear that a lot, like, everybody's going to be like, they're responsible to face their actions.
Right.
So,
But we communicate it so microscopically. We communicate saying that there's only one more judgment, and that's it. There's one more judgment. There's the final judgment, and that's it. What about from Christ's crucifixion to now? Has God judged at all? And in my opinion, yeah, God has judged. God has judged constantly. One perfect example are televangelists. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Cynthia.
I want to hear what you
Okay.
I want to hear what you have to say.
So there was this gentleman, I forgot his name now, but there was this gentleman who was the up-and-coming televangelist, and people were thinking that he was going to be better than Billy Graham, that he was going to move the nations, and he was going to establish a Christian government upon America, and so forth. And so all this power, all this prosperity, all this money was given to this one gentleman. And what happened was no one checked him on anything. That he became this Pope-like figure in his organization. And one of the things is he struggled with particular issues. He struggled with sexual issues. And whenever people are in power, woman or man, no matter what, there's going to be people of the opposite sex or people that you're attracted to that will just cling on to you. Why? Because power is attractive. Mm-hmm. Power is attractive, okay? We hear it a lot with the men. You're going to be pastors, and women are just going to cling on to you because they see you as like the perfect man next to Jesus and stuff like that. It's the same thing reverse. Same thing reverse. Men will do the same thing to women leaders and stuff like that. But I digress. So one of the things that he had issues with was sex. And so he got it wherever he wanted it. And, in my opinion, by the grace of God, he got caught. And they found out. And now I think he's working on it right now. But, yeah, I think that is an example of God's judgment. Another one is Ted Haggard. I don't know if you know that guy's name, but he was this big political evangelical guy. He was addicted to cocaine, and he struggled with homosexuality, and he got caught for it. Again, I think that's God's judgment. But at the same time, it's also God's grace. Yes. Because if you think about it, God could have any right to destroy him for his cocaine addiction or for his rampant sexuality sin. He could have gotten diseases from that. From both aspects, but he did it. And he got caught. Here's what we have to understand, and this took me a long time. When you're in sin, getting caught is God's grace. I want all of us to remember that. It's not that he's punishing us. It's him showing grace.
Thank you, Jesus. That
when we get caught, even though we didn't want to get caught, that's his grace. Basically, God's saying is, I had it enough, and I know that it'll bring this person, my child, to death. He doesn't understand it. She doesn't understand it yet. I have to catch him. But a lot of these people experience judgment. How? The world is making fun of us now. The world's making fun of them now. But in the midst of that judgment, we have grace.
I think in regards to you're talking about like being caught
Mhm.
and stuff. I think that's where I was trying to go with my blog. Was
Yeah.
when Israel or the woman, how there's two different ways, right? The stoning and
Yeah.
the naked before
Yeah.
everyone. I feel like that in a sense is us nowadays when the Lord is like, I need to expose you.
Right.
Instead of taking you out, instead of stoning you, I
Right.
want to expose you. And it's literally being naked before the Lord.
Oh,
And before everyone else.
Yeah.
That
That's exactly
see,
right.
like, dang, they just got cut. They're exposed.
That's exactly right.
So that's where I was going with the blog.
Yeah. Good.
Is that we're all going.
Yeah, we are, aren't we? I think the more contemporary example that I just thought of also is Mark Driscoll. And what happened to Mark Driscoll? You know, it wasn't really sexual sin that he dealt with, but it had to do with plagiarism and it had to do with leadership. That, and we'll just tell the truth. He was a horrible leader. He was an abusive leader, you know, and he got caught for it. He got caught for it. And again, it's for Christians, there's a sense God's judgment is wrapped in his grace. I'm thankful that God works this way. To know that his judgment is not to eliminate us or cause extinction for us, but it's to help us say, I am naked before the Lord. I'm naked before all you guys because I was stupid. And now I'm trying to get my life back together. So, all right, it's 9 o'clock. We didn't finish this. We'll finish this after break, but let me get you guys a break. Come back here at 9:10, okay? So I guess we'll begin again. So, and then we have Israel. So that's the second theme. And what we need to know in this book about Israel is the threat of losing the promised land. The threat of losing the promised land. It doesn't happen during the time of Amos, 50, 60 years. It happens 30 years after that, right? And so, but that's what's happening, and that's the message with Israel. And as I shared before, because it's such an early book, there is no hint of, did you lock it?
No.
Open the door. Oh. Never mind. Because it's such an early book, there is no hint of redemption or return.
Can we finish God?
Yes. And the way that it's being suggested in the book of Amos is that it is an indefinite exile. An indefinite exile. Okay? So, like I said, for Amos, we're not sure of what's happening. We're not sure of what will espouse for the northern kingdom. Or Amos doesn't know that. We know now in retrospect, based on the Christian tradition, what happens. Yes. Oh, well, yeah. Sorry. Thank you for letting me know that.
Well, because someone decided to make it responsible to lose all their other jobs.
It was not my fault. I'm sorry.
Probably be more responsible like
Okay, do you want me to play it? One more word.
I don't know what you're talking about. There's nothing to call me.
You literally read comic books like 90% of the time in your class.
I haven't opened a comic book this
You were looking at a page to buy more. I saw you.
No, that's not what I was doing.
Okay, what was it?
I was looking up a movie and I wanted to see it.
So much better. You're right. I'm so sorry.
May I continue now?
Yeah, I'm done.
All right. The next theme has to do with the nations. And what we see as a common theme in all other prophetic works is that God judges the nations who violate basic laws of justice. God condemns or judges nations based on basic principles basic laws of justice. Yes.
So, I've been following a lot of like feminist pages
Okay.
on Instagram, and something that they talk about a lot is like advocating for like equality for people of color and
Okay.
like women and stuff like.
Okay.
And I just been thinking about, because Amos asked me one time, he's like, so what are you gonna take from that? And, like what do you want to instill in other people?
Mm-hmm.
So I've just been kind of thinking, anyways. So I say this thing that like, what do you think? Like, because I feel like there is a lot of like, especially in America with our history and stuff, like there's a lot of like injustices, like,
Sure.
and definitely biases and stuff towards like people of color and things like that. And so like, how do you think? I mean, obviously we can't to do it like on a grand scale is like in time, but what do you think we could do to like help bring more justice to like minority people, or like, you know what I mean? Like people that, because I feel like there's just like a lot of.
I think it definitely starts with the individual. It definitely starts with the individual. And so one of the things is investigate yourself. What are certain things that maybe you've neglected or you overlooked based on race? You know what I'm saying? And then also, like, for example, also when the Black Lives Matter campaign, okay? And you don't have to say it. No one has to say it right now. But just think about it when I ask this question. How do you feel about it? If you critique it and are bothered by it, why? Why are you? You know, just deep down, why? You know? And so a lot of times when we ask that question and we're sober about it, we can realize a couple of things. And one of those things is that maybe we harbor racist presuppositions. And so, and I think it should start there. It should really start there, you know, because it's not going to happen when you have, it's not going to happen from the top down. It needs to begin with an awakening of the individual. So.
Sorry, just to comment on that, because like I have heard a lot of stuff concerning that, especially like on those pages and stuff, but I was asking them, like, I don't think I really know what it's about, because in my mind I'm like all life, like to me I was like, it doesn't like
right.
All lives matter, but
sure, of course it does, of course it does.
Because I just didn't understand when she was explaining like what's behind it, and even especially when she explained it, and then I was like, oh okay, now I get it. And then also there was something in there that said like to say that all lives matter, or to kind of like oh well yes, but so is everybody else, or there are other things to be concerned. When you do that, it's very dismissive of the fact that
that's exactly what it does. That's exactly what it does.
Going through something.
That's exactly what it does.
And I never thought about it like that. And so now I think about things like when even if I don't say it out loud, like when I have a response thought to something, I'm more aware of like how I don't want to be dismissive of the fact that.
Well, and that's the exercise. That's the discipline. That's the discipline. And so ask yourself, and all of us should, what have been certain presuppositions that I've overlooked in regards to that context, right? So that's what, I would go with that first. And then we can continue on through discussion from there and stuff. All right, let's see. So God judges nations who violate basic laws of justice. What is the theological inference here? It's this. It infers a monotheistic worldview. If God judges, or if God can judge these other nations in a non-monotheistic worldview, it's like, why is he doing that? Why is God judging this other nation down the street? Or why is this God judging this neighborhood up the valley or something like that? Why is he doing that? In a monotheistic worldview, it makes so much more sense because he created everything. There's only one God, and he's judging his creation. Okay? How did this monotheistic worldview come about? Right? Because the problem here is that the people of Israel apparently aren't monotheistic anymore. But were they ever? Okay? So there's two theories here. What is Amos doing? Perhaps it's a transition from henotheism to monotheism. Remember what henotheism is?
Oh, I got this one.
What's henotheism?
It's when you believe in the one God, but you also acknowledge other gods.
Very good. Very good. So there's a belief in the existence of other gods, but you chose to commit your loyalty and worship to one God.
Right.
Very good. That's henotheism, right? And so what Amos is suggesting, perhaps, is a transition from henotheism to monotheism, where the idea is that there's no such things as other gods, but there is only one God, okay? And so if that's the case, Amos is an innovator. He's changing the tables, if you will. He's reversing things. He's not saying something old, he's saying something new. Okay, he's an innovator. All right? So that's one idea. Or it is a return to monotheism from polytheism. So that Israel was polytheistic, but they weren't polytheistic before. They were monotheistic. And so Amos is trying to convince them to return back to monotheism. If that's the case, then Amos is a reformer. Amos is a reformer. Excuse me.
You are excused.
Basically, this whole theme of judging nations it suggests this. There is only one God who judges all. It conveys a monotheistic worldview. Are we good?
Mm-hmm.
No. Sorry.
No. That's cool. May I continue on?
Mm-hmm.
All right, 2 more slides of this, and then we'll get to talk about the Assyrians. Nature. You need to understand, Amos believes, as we all should, that God controls nature.
Did we skip Israel?
No, Israel was before the nations.
Oh, oops.
Not present.
Okay? God controls nature. Also, nature expresses the creative power of God. It showcases that what? God is creator.
Are people, because we consider like animals part of nature.
Yeah.
So are people part of nature?
Yeah.
Okay.
What about, because I know the problem that the Israelites had was like rain and things
Yeah,
like that. So
good.
did they consider God was over rain?
Yeah, that God controlled the rain. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But in Amos, here's what he suggests. Not only the first 2 points, this is also he suggests. God will use nature to condemn and judge Israel. There's an example, not in Amos. Amos and a lot of the prophets, they talk about a famine. They talk about pestilence, fires, and all that. But how did God use nature in a more violent way with the prophets? Elisha. When little kids made fun of Elisha, calling him bald head, bald head, bald head. And what did Elisha do? Curse the kids. And what happened? Mother bears came and devoured them.
Children are always like, when they're used in a bad way, they're so stinking creepy and weird.
So.
Like in the Passion of Christ when they were following Judas.
Yeah.
It's like, what's happening here?
All right, may I continue on?
Did I read that? Yeah.
Well, I
No.
wrote it.
No.
I wrote it.
Okay, good.
Make up your mind for that.
Go ahead.
All right. Finally, the final thing, future. And the question is this: will the northern kingdom return? And the problem is we really don't know. We really don't know. Or for Amos's point of view, we really don't know. Like I said, there's only 2 passages in Amos that possibly infer it. Chapter 5, 14 and 15, and chapter 9, 10 through 15.
Those are little teeny tiny verses.
Yeah, within 9 chapters of material, you only have these 2 passages that talk about it. So the question, though, is what is the intention of Amos with just these 2 passages, right?
What's one of your favorite stories in the Bible? Or top 3? I don't know.
That's a good question. I don't know.
Okay, here's another question.
All right.
I don't know if it's any easier. What's one of your favorite attributes of God?
I like that God. I like that God does things behind the scenes. I think that's an attribute that. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of times where He says, "Give me glory" and stuff, but then just all the things that happen. That's just like this. This is more than just coincidence. There's something special just happened right now, and just how God works. It's God working without, Yeah, that's one thing.
I think that's mine too. I like the fact that all things like work together.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
It's like,
So I guess it's an aspect of His sovereignty, but
I think to me, because I think about, like, I'll think about, oh my gosh. Let me start over. When I'm taking Amtrak home, sometimes I'll just be looking at, like, the cities. I'm like, man, there's so many cities. And then I think, like, man, there's so many houses. And, like, every home, like, neighbor to neighbor has a different, like, story. That home has a different story. And each person in that home has their own story. And then so on and so on.
Oh,
every
wow.
home in every city in every country in every,
That's good.
And I just think of how, like, complex and intricate that God has made each of these stories,
But they're intertwined in some
And
way.
they're so intertwined, yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, Miss Yano says for every 6 person you could connect them back. You can know.
You can connect
There's a
with
degree,
anybody
yeah.
through 6 people.
That's true.
I'm connected to Kanye by
God loves Kanye. I know.
I know God.
I know God.
Therefore, I know Kanye. Damn.
So it's really 2 for Christians.
It's really just, we're just one body. That's it.
Or he was like Obama. He was like, I have a friend that works there.
Oh, I think he was like, I have a friend who's like a senator, congressman.
All right.
I
Are we
have a
done?
friend who cut Obama's hair.
Okay.
All right.
For real, actually.
I believe you.
And then you can't remember it anymore.
Let's talk about
All right.
the Assyrians. Okay. All right. So the Assyrians are actually an old nation, and there's still vestige, or there's still a remnant of the Assyrians even today.
Wait, what?
Yeah. So it's a very old nation, but rise to world domination when they decided to become a world power.
What was the biggest title? What was the big title?
Oh, power is war.
Power is war. Gracias.
The Assyrian Empire, power is war.
Oh, back up. Just kidding.
Okay, perfect.
Reaction.
Okay. All right. So Now, they didn't decide from the very get-go to expand as an empire. It was actually due to frustration of being subjugated by empires and stuff like that. So, or subjugated by powerful people. But their empire expansion business occurred for 300 years, between 900 to 600 BC. They decided, hey, we don't want to live under someone's foot anymore. We want to be the guy that have other people live under our foot. So that happened for 300 years, specific or generally in the range of 900 to 600 BC. What helped them, I see that hand, what helped them with their rise of world domination? Advanced military tactics and technology, strong and intimidating military-minded kings, and a fear-controlled empire. Those are the three main reasons that I want you guys to know for this class of why made Assyria so successful. Okay? Waller.
Not like, because I know that I'm sure that there's like plenty of people groups or like countries and stuff out there who want to either expand or like, you know, whatever.
ISIS.
And so, but that doesn't always mean that they can, or that if they will, that they're successful. So like taking somebody or like this country who does decide to go and just like, we're going to take over our neighbors, and then they fail.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's a big gamble.
Do they like, because they failed, do they just kind of like go back and just be like, okay,
no, they get decimated most times of the time. It depends on how
they in turn get conquered themselves.
Perhaps.
Fail.
Exactly.
Dying, then you no longer exist. Like if you're in a war,
it's not like every
So
single
everybody
person
wins.
in
So
the
it depends
country
on,
fighting.
so say for example, this Assyrian country went to their next kingdom and fought them and they lost. It depends on what that kingdom would do to them. They could enslave them, kill them, and so forth. But they tried their best and it didn't work. You know, so.
Okay, so they wanted to take over because they were tired of being the
Taking over,
leaders.
right. Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, go ahead, Brennan.
There weren't any. This is the first empire ever happening, or there
No, there was other empires, like Egypt was an empire.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So,
they felt that it was Assyrians' turn now.
Oh, so when they say the 5 emperors, they don't ever mention like
Egypt?
Yeah.
It wasn't a major threat for Israel. They didn't consider it a major
threat to,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Got it.
Remember, it's the context of Israel history.
Oh yeah, this is a biased book.
Right. So there's been a lot of empires. It's just that the ones that really impacted them were here. Okay. All right. May I begin? Can I go do the next 3?
Are you recording still?
I am recording.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, and by the way, the 3 points here, I'm gonna emphasize more in detail in this presentation.
Okay.
So here's the beginning. In the beginning. Okay.
Ooh, yes.
So, do I have where's my mouse? There you are. Okay. So Assyria, if you can see, you really can't. But here's the Tigris River,
Very good.
and here's the Euphrates River. This is Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia. And if you want to know what Mesopotamia means, it's between 2 rivers. Anyways, so Assyria was kind of like in the northern territory near the Tigris. That's how they started, okay? And so kingdom after kingdom conquered them. They said, this is it. We don't want to take this anymore. We're going to do the conquering ourselves. And so in the beginning of the 900 BCs, they started to expand their territory. And they go all the way down to Babylon and right before Israel, okay? And these are these 2 were, I think, in the 8th century BC. So that's 700s by Ashurbanipal and Shalmaneser III. These guys were like ruthless, and they did most of their expansion, okay? Not most. They did a lot of expanding. The person that did the most is the next slide. His name is Tiglath-Pileser III. Tiglath-Pileser III. Tiglath, if you wanted the best Girl Scout who sell the most cookies, it was Tiglath-Pileser III. And if my metaphor worked correctly, selling cookies means expanding territory. Tiglath-Pileser III did it. Okay? The reason why Tiglath-Pileser III is so famous in Assyrian history is because he made the Assyrian Empire what it was, at its high time. He did the most expansion. Okay? So let me do a before and after. Here's before. Okay? Now here's after. Okay? So he expanded the empire by double, if you will. Okay? So this guy, and I'll explain more about Tiglath, how he was able to do it. Yes?
Where's Edom?
Edom,
Isn't it at the bottom?
I see it.
it's near there.
I see it in the bigger picture.
Okay, cool.
On the bottom.
Right there.
And then where is Syria?
Syria is up north. Yes, can you guys hear me?
Sir, we are hearing you. We are hearing you.
Okay, great. Thank you. I got to do attendance at the end of the day with you guys, okay?
Okay, then let's go to the...
Okay, so then I'll just continue on with this presentation. So, okay, cool. So that's the expansion of Tiglath-Pileser III. Right before its collapse, this is how big the Assyrian Empire was.
Good God.
Okay?
Whoa.
So right before its collapse, this is how big
Wait,
the
they
Assyrian
even
Empire.
had Egypt too?
Yeah, they had parts of Egypt.
Follow the water.
They had parts of Egypt.
Dang.
Much later on.
But
Much later on.
handled. Why didn't it get into Sinai?
It's desert.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Don't need it.
Mostly desert. So, okay. So right before the collapse of the Assyrian Empire, that's how big it got. That's how big it got. And the problem with expanding and not having the resources to defend your expansion started collapsing. It started collapsing, okay? So the bigger it got, the fatter it got, it was unable to keep its borders, if you will. A common thing that happens with empires. So
They got Judah before Babylon got? I thought Babylon was the one that conquered Judah.
Babylon conquered and destroyed Judah. They are still a vassal system. They were allowed to live if they paid tribute.
Oh.
Remember? So it's not that they were eliminated, it's that Assyria took over the land.
Okay.
Okay? All right.
Assyria took them over first and then Babylon.
Yep, exactly. Because whatever Assyria had, it was now Babylon's.
Man, Babylon had it kind of easy, didn't they? I mean,
Well,
once
still, they had to fight.
Yeah, but once they took down Assyria, then they got to have everything that Assyria had, right?
Right, exactly. And that's the same thing with the Greeks and the same thing with the Romans. So, all right, so what made them so successful? Reason number one, military tactics and technology, okay? The kings invested in the best equipment. What was the best at the time? The use of iron weapons. And if you had an iron sword or an iron dagger against a bronze shield, it would cut it up like butter. Okay? So they had iron weapons. They also utilized horses. I know that how could horse be a technology? Think of it this way. Before, they had these really clumsy things that they attached to horses called chariots and really slow and bulky. But what the Assyrians did is they created a mounted horseback warrior. And so you had these archers on horses and they're shooting things at you while on horses. Now imagine if you had thousands of them. It's really intimidating. Okay, that's all I got to say. Exactly. These mounted warriors were fully armored, and they had iron-tipped bow and arrow. So it's speed. That's what helped this army. They could move fast. They also had a large standing army, meaning that they had a lot of people in the army. And it was a diverse army. So you had slingshot throwers, you had lancers, you had infantry, which is like hand-to-hand combat. You had guys who archery.
Oh yeah.
You even had people who didn't have weapons, but just had shields for people who had weapons. You know what I'm saying? So you had armor bearers.
Really effective.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And so you had this large standing army, this diverse standing army, okay? Now, if you're going to expand your kingdom for over thousands of miles, you also need to implement large granaries situated on war routes. Because the only way to have a powerful army is to have a very well-fed army, right? And so what the Assyrian kings did is they situated, whenever they expanded their territory, they put a granary there.
What's a granary?
Granary is like grains, like a grocery store. They had a super Walmart. Whenever they expanded territory, think of it that way. Whenever they expanded territory, they always put a super Target or a super Walmart there. Okay, so that when they need more reinforcements, they could just continue on that route and be well fed. Okay, going hundreds of thousands of miles. Right, exactly. Okay, and then finally, they also implemented tactics of intimidation and fear. So one of the things that they would do is that they would impale their enemies, right? What's impaling? You get a pike, stick them in the ground, and then you place that person's dead body on the pike. Okay? There's a battle that the Assyrians fought near Israel called the Battle of Lachish. And what happened was they conquered Lachish, and all the rebels in that city that were like the ringleaders, they put them on pikes. And they just said, this is what we do to those who mess with us. Also, Assyrians would invite dignitaries from all their conquered nations to go and visit them in their capital, which was, by the way, what was Assyria's capital? Nineveh, exactly, Nineveh. So remember that. The Assyrian capital, I don't have it on my presentation, but the Assyrian capital is Nineveh. Okay? Here's what they thought was artistic. All their exploits over their prisoners. So you'll have pictures of people being beheaded. You have pictures of people's guts being torn out. You would have pictures of people being nailed to a pike and stuff like that. All of these pictures would be in the palace. Okay? And so what the Assyrian kings would do is that they would invite these dignitaries from their conquered nations, and they said, I want you to check out my living room. You see all this?
Beautiful.
Bullies.
You see all this? I'll do that to you if you ever think of rebelling against me.
That's crazy.
So it's all these fear tactics, intimidation that the Assyrians were known to do. Okay? Cool? Not really cool, but yeah, let me continue.
If they would have taken that concept of the large granaries as they move and used that for like security purposes, like to every time that they conquer something to establish like a border patrol or security or defense, and then have a team continue to move forward.
Exactly.
They probably could have kept a lot more of what they were doing.
This is true. And a lot of the fact that there were smart kings that instituted that, but then there were stupid kings that did otherwise in the mix. And that's what happened. They crumbled and so forth. But the next thing I wanted to mention is what kept the expansion going? Strong military-minded kings. And I want to bring up these six to you. And the reason why I wanted to bring up these six to you is some of them were strong, some of them were stupid, but all of them impacted Israel's history. Okay? So the first two is Shalmaneser III, who ruled 859 to 824 BC. Then good old Tiglath.
Oh yeah.
Tiglath-Pileser III. Then we have Sargon II.
Question.
Yes.
Are these descendants of Noah's other kids?
Which one?
The Assyrians.
I don't know. Which kid though?
That's a good
Well,
question.
depending on what you believe, they would have.
Not the one that
Not the one that
can't read
told
Abraham.
Not Ham.
Not-
Shem or the Israel, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Maybe Japheth. I don't know.
Well, if you believe that everything was wiped out, it had to be from one of them.
Yeah.
True. I don't know. Had to be, but it's not the point. Anyways, who's after Tiglath-Sargon II? And there's another gentleman by the name of Sennacherib.
I used to read the Bible by myself. I used to study with places.
No, these are names. Then the next one, ready? Sinshar-Ishkun. 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 And then Ashur-Uballit II.
That's why they got defeated. Wow. People were trying to say their names, but by the time they said their whole name, they already got their heads.
Now, if you haven't gotten the dates or the names yet, don't worry about it. I'm going to go through each one in detail, okay? So.
Okay. 722. Strong Kings, but 722 is when. Okay, yeah, you're right. Okay, yeah, that's right. Okay.
Yeah, you see where I'm getting at? See where I'm getting at?
Yeah.
All right, let's go with Shalmaneser III. Okay, he ruled from 859 to 824 BC. He's kind of like, if you had to give gold medals to these folks, he's kind of like silver medal, Shalmaneser III. Okay, he continued Assyrian expansion, and he continued it to the point that he was the first to make the Northern Kingdom a vassal state. Now, some of you might be asking, what's a vassal state, Professor Simon? I'll give you guys that answer later on, okay? But he made the Northern Kingdom first a vassal state, all right? The king, the Israel king, who was the vassal at this time, was King Jehu. King Jehu. And you can read about King Jehu in 2 Kings chapters 9 through 11, okay? So the Northern Kingdom was a vassal of Assyria from the beginning of 841 BC. All right? The Northern Kingdom was a vassal state of Assyria. It was no longer autonomous to by itself. It didn't rule by itself anymore. It was under Assyrian rule all the way back to 841 BC. And there's extra biblical historical documentation to this. There's this, in Assyria now, there's this black obelisk, and that black obelisk has an inscription of King Jehu begging Assyria, this Shalmaneser III, for an extra time to pay off his tribute. So it's incredible. Okay, so that's Shalmaneser III. The next one is Tiglath-Pileser or Tiglath-Pileser III. Okay, after Shalmaneser, there was a weak king, or there was 2 or 3 weaker kings. Tiglath-Pileser wasn't royal. He wasn't of royal blood. He said, "Screw this. We're not going to deal with weak kings anymore." So he was a general. He was a commander that assassinated the previous weak king.
Oh, dang.
He said, he doesn't represent Assyria. Okay, and so he kills and assassinates the previous king, and he himself becomes king.
Sounds a little like anarchy.
Yeah, exactly, like a coup, right? That's exactly what it is. And what makes Tiglath so famous is this: the largest expansion in Assyrian history.
Because he was a commander. Right?
Yeah, he knew the military. He knew the military. So much so, he created the first professional standing army. What do I mean by that? Prior, it was more like militia. It was like a draft. You told the men of your society to come in and fight for you, right? Tiglath says, I don't want to do that anymore. I'm going to actually have men, and I'm going to pay them to be soldiers. Okay? Kind of like our military.
Did he teach them how
to be.
How to fight, how to kill, and this and that. And once you do, then I'll reward you by you can retire happy and so forth and whatnot. You can have your own house. You could have your own land and so forth and whatnot. And so he made the first professional standing army. He paid people just to be soldiers. Okay? In regards to Israel's history, he's the guy that helped King Ahaz in the Syro-Ephraimite War. Yeah. So remember, there's the king of Israel.
Yeah.
He's, what was his name? Jehoshaphat. And then there was the king of Syria, Pekah.
Yeah.
And then they go and say, hey, Ahaz, what's up, bro? Let our differences be aside. Help us fight against Assyria. And Ahaz says, no, I like Assyria. I want to support them, and so forth. And then that makes, Jehoshaphat and Pekah mad. And so they fight against Judah. And then Ahaz goes, help Assyria, help us. Tiglath-Pileser says, okay, I'll help you. You pay me money. This is part of the agreement. I'll help you. And they defeat the northern kingdom and Assyria.
Man, I would have rather been conquered over
Shut
a sibling
Right?
tribe than
Well, I'm not letting a sibling conquer me. I'd rather get conquered by someone else. My brother never conquered me.
Are you the oldest?
Yes.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, there you go.
But my brother's bigger than me and smarter than me.
That's kind of you. Anyways,
Still, oh no, he makes me look like an idiot.
here's what, the next thing I want to say is, here's what Tiglath-Pileser did. That was really messed up. He instituted forced deportation.
What does that mean?
So basically, remember what Assyria did with the 10 tribes of Israel? He took them and he placed them little by little throughout the entire Assyrian Empire. This is the first guy to do it. Why was that so effective? Because if you put, exactly, couldn't regroup, and then you lose your identity by intermarriage and stuff like that.
Slavery.
Right, exactly. So he's the first guy to do it. He's the first guy to do it.
Man, that's like evil genius.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tiglath-Pileser was a messed up dude. Evil genius, perfect. Tiglath-Pileser, hashtag evil genius. That's exactly right.
He is an evil genius.
Yep.
Oh my god.
So he's the guy that expanded Assyrian territory. He gets the gold medal for that. He's the best Girl Scout because he sold the most cookies.
Did he have a family?
Yeah. So
What were family dynamics back then? 'Cause,
that's a great question. It's probably male-dominated society. So that's all I know. Anyways, may I continue on?
Well, any successful society would not look the what? I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
He's being
Let's go to Sargon II. Why do I put Sargon II here? He's the ruler that conquered the northern kingdom.
722.
Yep. He is the ruler that conquered the northern kingdom in 722 BC. Okay? And he's the one that did the forced deportations of the tribes. If Granddaddy told me to do it, what was that?
It wasn't me, honest.
That was me. Sorry.
Wait, so right after that general killed the wheat king,
Right.
was it his line after that?
Right. So Granddaddy said that we forcefully deport people. So that's what we're going to do to Israel. Yes.
So this is what Amos was talking about.
This is what Amos was talking about. That's exactly right.
What do you mean? That's what he's talking about.
Remember how Amos was prophesying between 760 and 750 BC?
Oh,
This is his prophecy being fulfilled.
that it was gonna.
It's okay.
So. Okay?
Wait, sorry. So I'm asking the same question. So this is what Amos was talking about?
This is what Amos was talking about.
What was he talking about?
The fall of the northern kingdom.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay?
So who was the king? Because if Sargon is Tiglath's grandson, then who did his Sargon's father rule,
Yeah, before him.
and he wasn't any special?
He's important, but he's not important for the class.
Okay.
Let's not sweat about him. All right?
Was he a weak though? Was he
No.
one of the dumb ones?
He maintained. He was a maintainer.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you want more information on him, research it yourself.
So, may I continue on?
Yes.
The next one is Sennacherib. Now, since the northern kingdom is gone, now Assyria is dealing with the southern kingdom. Sennacherib is famous because he sieged Jerusalem after Hezekiah refused to pay tribute in 701 BC. This is during the time of Isaiah.
Besieged.
Yes, he besieged.
So, when you paid tribute
Yes,
to somebody,
yes.
I mean, in essence, it was like in order to keep their
Fully
identity,
money.
right?
Right.
But you're still not really, because
There you go.
you're still under their
Exactly.
control anyways.
Exactly.
With all that purple.
So
Well,
it's
would you
kind of
want
like a, I'm paying, so it's
I'm paying, basically, you're paying them to protect you
from themselves.
from, well, the question is, well, who are we protecting ourselves from? And it's from them. Exactly. So,
Well, I mean, it allows you to maintain at least that aspect of your identity.
sure.
Yeah.
There's only if you don't, they wake you out.
Okay, so Sennacherib. Now, according to the history of Sennacherib, according to the Assyrian history, what happened was Jerusalem paid an enormous tribute, and that's why Sennacherib leaves. But in reality, no one is actually sure why Sennacherib leaves Jerusalem. And there's a miracle that occurs in the book of Isaiah and in 2 Kings that talks about that. That God intervened and it made and Sennacherib flees from it. Okay? But historically, no one knows for sure.
Do you know what the passages are in Isaiah?
No, I don't. Off the top of my head.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay.
All right. May I continue on?
Yeah.
I gotta go though.
Okay, sorry. I have 2 more slides. So here are the final kings. Sinshar Ishkan and Ashur-uballit II.
What is happening here with these?
Okay? These guys weren't strong leaders at all. These guys were actually very weak leaders. Okay? Extremely weak leaders. But why do I bring them up? Because these are the guys, you have to blame these guys for the fall of Assyria.
Aww.
They're the ones that allowed Assyria to get conquered
So
by
these were the
Babylon.
morons.
These were the schmucks.
Evil geniuses.
And so these are the ones that fall to Assyria, and Babylon conquers Assyria because of these two. And like I said, like their empire was so big they couldn't control it anymore. And so, and if you're driving your empire out of fear, sooner than later, when you don't have the power, you have grudges. And there's these foreign nations that have these huge grudges and say, hey, we're just going to wait our time. And once you become weak, we're going to kill you.
We're coming in.
That's kind of what the Babylon.
That's exactly why. That's exactly why.
I remember Asher. Is he in the Bible?
Asher is in the Bible, actually. Okay?
608. Because yeah, 608 is when they did the first deportation.
By Babylon.
Job.
Good.
Job.
Very good, Burnett.
She's really good with dates.
All right, one more slide.
Oh, shoot. Okay.
All right. So, like I said, how did they maintain control? They maintain control through fear. Maintain control through fear. One, for example, like I said, they impaled rebels in front of cities. This is the beginning of crucifixion. They're the ones that invented the shame of having dead corpses all around and say, hey, this is what we did to your mom and dad and your brothers. Shape up and behave, or we'll do it to you. Okay? They instituted forced deportation. which again, they couldn't regroup, just like Monica said, but it eliminated their identity by intermarriage and mingling and so forth. When they conquered kingdoms, those kingdoms become vassal states. And what a vassal state is basically you're under the control of Assyria and you have to pay heavy tribute. Money and goods. Excuse me. And another thing that they did, and it was actually, again, going back to the evil genius Tiglath-Pileser III, he kind of instituted this unwritten rule of how to rule his kingdom. If the king rebelled, the entire kingdom rebelled. So, before Tiglath-Pileser III, if the king says, I don't want to pay tribute, all Assyrian kings would just punish the king and his family, okay? After Tiglath-Pileser III, if a king rebelled, Tiglath-Pileser III did this. Oh no, not just the king rebelled, that entire kingdom rebelled. So, if I'm going to exact punishment, I'm not going to exact punishment on simply the king. I'm going to exact punishment on his entire nation. That's what Tiglath-Pileser did. This was a scare tactic to cause rebellion within the kingdom of that, Why would it do that? Because if you found out that your king did something stupid that will cause you to die and your family to die a horrible warlike death, you're going to go to the king, kill him, and say, hey, look, we killed the king. Sorry of what we did. We'll pay tribute back to you.
Oh my God.
So that's the reason why Tiglath-Pileser III instituted it. Either he was going to decimate his enemy, or he's going to allow the enemy to kill itself in order to get tribute. Win-win situation.
So he just sent like messengers across the city saying, hey, we're going to kill you.
No, not simply messengers. He sent his army.
You're about to die.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, you're not going to pay me tribute? You're about to die. I like that. So, okay? All right, so those are the Assyrians. We'll get into Amos and Joel Friday, and then yeah. All right, so what's that? No, we're reading Amos on Friday. We're going to read Amos on Friday. So, okay? Any questions? If not, God bless you guys, and I'll see you guys on Friday.
For Revelation, I always get these two questions. Our assignments due this Friday, right?
Yes, that's correct. All right, my friends in Pakistan, how are you? Can you guys hear me? I should probably stop recording.